Your favorite driver, who's been putting up a fierce fight for the championship, suddenly finds themselves losing points. Not because of a crash, not due to a technical failure, but because of a simple comment made during a post-race interview. It sounds absurd, right? But this could soon become a reality with the FIA's shocking new rules. These changes are set to completely shake up the way Formula One operates, leaving drivers furious and fans wondering what the future holds for the sport. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these rules have the potential to completely alter Formula One as we know it. And before we go any further, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next in the world of F1. Now, let's break down these changes. The FIA has recently made significant updates to its sporting code, focusing heavily on driver behavior both on and off the track. These updates, outlined in Article 12, introduce harsh penalties for actions deemed to be misconduct or behavior that could damage the reputation of the sport. The penalties start with fines: $10,000 for a first-time offense. However, if a driver repeats such actions, the fine increases to $40,000. But it doesn't stop there. A second offense could lead to a 1-month suspension, and a third might not only result in suspension, but also the deduction of championship points. Think about that. A driver could lose their chance at a title over something as subjective as what the FIA defines as misconduct. So what qualifies as misconduct? The rules are intentionally broad, covering everything from offensive language to rude gestures or behavior deemed inappropriate. Even a comment that could potentially offend someone or humiliate another individual might fall under this category. Do you remember last season when Max Verstappen was penalized for using foul language during an interview? He had to do community service as part of his penalty. Or how about the time Charles Leclerc let an expletive slip in a press conference? Fortunately for him, his immediate apology reduced his punishment to just a fine. Under these new rules, though, incidents like these could lead to much harsher consequences. Drivers might face suspensions for entire races, or even lose crucial championship points for minor slip-ups. The FIA's crackdown doesn't stop with language. It's also targeting political, religious, and personal statements. From now on, drivers will need prior approval from the governing body before making any comments on these topics. If they fail to comply, the penalties are severe: public apologies, large fines, suspensions, and of course, points deductions. This approach has raised eyebrows among drivers and fans alike, with many questioning whether the FIA is overstepping its boundaries. What makes Formula One so captivating is the larger-than-life personalities and raw emotions displayed by the drivers. These new rules, however, could completely suppress that aspect of the sport. Imagine watching a race where drivers are so cautious, so careful not to say the wrong thing or express themselves too freely, that it feels almost robotic. The passion and individuality that make F1 unique could soon be stifled by these rigid regulations. The reactions from the drivers have been explosive, to say the least. The Grand Prix Drivers Association, GPDA, has already issued a strong statement condemning the FIA's new approach. One driver, speaking anonymously, said the new rules were a slap in the face to athletes who risk their lives for the sport. Another driver compared the FIA's crackdown to a dictatorship, insisting that drivers are not robots and shouldn't be expected to be perfect all the time. Lewis Hamilton, always outspoken when it comes to driver rights, didn't hold back either. In a recent interview, he criticized the new rules, saying that Formula One is supposed to be a sport where passion and individuality shine through. "These rules are silencing us," he remarked. Max Verstappen, known for speaking his mind, also labeled the changes as ridiculous and warned that it could worsen the already existing tension between drivers and the FIA. "We already feel like we're walking on eggshells," he said, "but now it feels like they're trying to take away everything that makes us human." Fernando Alonso, never one to mince words, was even more blunt. "It's another example of how out of touch they are," he said. "They sit in their offices making rules, but they don't understand what it's like to be in our shoes." For Alonso, the essence of Formula One has always been about competition and emotion, and these new rules are threatening to take that away. Younger drivers like Lando Norris and George Russell have also expressed concerns about the vagueness of these new rules. They pointed out that terms like moral injury and offensive behavior are highly subjective, meaning what one steward considers offensive, another might brush off as harmless. This lack of clarity could lead to inconsistent enforcement and make things even more complicated for the drivers. It's a nightmare scenario, one driver getting penalized for a heated comment while another is let off with nothing for a similar offense. The potential for controversy is enormous, and it's difficult to see how this won't create more tension between the drivers and the FIA. So why is the FIA implementing these changes? According to insiders, it's all about maintaining professionalism and protecting the sport's image. FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem has been especially vocal about cracking down on what he sees as unprofessional behavior. Last season, he compared F1 drivers to rappers, saying, "We're not in the music business, we're in motorsport, and we need to act like it." Ben Sulayem's comments have only added fuel to the fire, with many drivers accusing him of being disconnected from the realities of modern Formula One. Fans, too, are starting to question whether this is the direction they want the sport to go in. These new rules might bring a sense of order and professionalism, but they could also strip away what makes Formula One so special: the passion, the humanity, and the unpredictable drama that keep fans on the edge of their seats. Think back to some of the most iconic moments in F1 history. How many of those were fueled by raw emotion, by drivers expressing their frustrations or celebrating their victories in front of millions? These are the moments that resonate with fans because they remind us that beneath the helmets, drivers are just like the rest of us. They have their flaws, their tempers, and their opinions. But if these new rules go through, how much of that will remain? Formula One is a high-pressure, high-stakes sport. Emotions naturally run high, and it's part of what makes the competition so exciting. But by introducing these vague and subjective rules, the FIA risks creating an environment where drivers feel constantly stifled, second-guessing their words and actions. This could lead to a more reserved and cautious grid, one where drivers are too afraid to take risks or express themselves freely. The fear of losing points or facing suspensions could change the very essence of the sport. We have to ask ourselves, is this really the future we want for Formula One? Do we want a sport where drivers are scared to show their true personalities? The unpredictability of F1 has always been part of its charm: the rivalries, the outbursts, the raw emotions. But with these new rules, we could see a much more controlled, predictable environment. Is that what the fans want? There's also a much broader issue at play. By cracking down on political, religious, and personal statements, the FIA is wading into controversial territory. In an era where athletes in all sports are using their platforms to speak up for causes they believe in, limiting the voices of F1 drivers feels like a step backward. These athletes are more than just competitors. They're global icons who inspire change and give a voice to important issues. Silencing them not only weakens their role as ambassadors for the sport, but also risks alienating the fans who admire them for more than just their driving. And let's not forget about fairness. With penalties ranging from fines to suspensions and points deductions, the stakes have never been higher. The subjectivity of terms like moral injury and misconduct leaves the door wide open for inconsistent enforcement. Fans could lose faith in the system if they see how one driver is penalized for a minor infraction while another walks away with no consequences. The lack of clarity in these rules could fuel even more tension between the drivers and the governing body.